Most people don't fail because they are lazy. They fail because they keep telling themselves one simple lie. I'll do it tomorrow. Maybe you've said that sentence today. Maybe you said it yesterday. Maybe you've been saying it for years. Tomorrow, I'll start eating better. Tomorrow, I'll finally work on that idea. Tomorrow, I'll focus on my goals. Tomorrow, I'll change my life. But tomorrow keeps moving. It never arrives the way you imagine it will. And slowly, without noticing, days turn into weeks, weeks into years, and one day you wake up realizing that life didn't betray you. You betrayed yourself by waiting. This is why this book matters. This is why Do It Today matters right now, in your life, at this exact moment. Because procrastination doesn't just steal time. It steals confidence. It steals self-respect. It steals the belief that you can trust yourself. And the most painful part isn't failing. The most painful part is knowing you could have done more, but didn't. Darius Foroux didn't write this book to motivate you with hype or empty words. He wrote it because he lived the struggle of overthinking, delaying, and waiting for the right time, only to realize that the right time never shows up on its own. Darius Foroux is a writer, entrepreneur, and thinker who built his career not through sudden inspiration, but through consistent action. Before success, before recognition, before books and articles read by millions, he was someone stuck in the same mental loop many of us live in, wanting more from life, yet delaying the work that would create it. What makes his message powerful is not that he claims to be special. It's that he shows how ordinary people sabotage extraordinary potential by waiting. And this book is not about hustle culture. It's not about working yourself to exhaustion. It's about understanding the psychology of delay, fear, comfort, and resistance, and learning how to act despite them. Because the truth is simple, but uncomfortable. You already know what to do. You just don't do it. And the reason has nothing to do with intelligence, talent, or luck. It has everything to do with avoidance. Procrastination is not a time management problem. It's an emotional management problem. We delay because we want to avoid discomfort. We avoid effort. We avoid fear. We avoid uncertainty. We avoid the possibility of failing. So instead, we scroll. We plan. We consume content. We prepare. Preparation feels productive. But preparation without action is just another form of fear. Darius explains that most people confuse motion with progress. They read books, watch videos, take notes, and talk about their goals, but never cross the line into execution. Why? Because action is uncomfortable. Doing the work exposes you. It forces you to face your limitations. It removes excuses. When you say, "I'll do it tomorrow," you're not being lazy, you're protecting your ego. Tomorrow is safe. Tomorrow doesn't demand courage. Tomorrow doesn't risk failure. But today does. And here's the brutal truth. Your life is shaped by what you repeatedly do today, not by what you plan to do tomorrow. Darius talks about how people overestimate motivation and underestimate discipline. They wait to feel ready. They wait for inspiration. They wait for confidence. But confidence doesn't come before action. Confidence comes from action. You don't feel confident and then act. You act, and confidence follows. Think about anything you're good at now. There was a time you were bad at it. A time you felt uncomfortable. A time you doubted yourself. You didn't wait until fear disappeared. You moved while fear was still there. That's how growth actually works. Procrastination often disguises itself as perfectionism. You tell yourself the timing isn't right. You tell yourself you need more knowledge. You tell yourself it won't be good enough. But perfectionism is not about high standard. It's about fear of judgment, fear of being seen trying, fear of being seen failing, fear of not being enough. So you delay. And the longer you delay, the heavier the task feels. The mind magnifies unfinished work. A simple task becomes a mental monster. That's why something you avoid for weeks can often be done in minutes. Darius emphasizes that clarity comes after action, not before it. Most people wait for clarity to start. But clarity is a result of movement. You don't figure life out by thinking. You figure it out by doing. Action creates feedback. Feedback creates learning. Learning creates improvement. Without action, nothing changes. He explains that the brain is wired to conserve energy. Your mind prefers comfort, familiarity, and routine, even if those routines are destroying your future. That's why doing nothing feels easier than doing something meaningful. Meaningful work demands focus. Focus demands effort. Effort demands energy. So your brain resists. But here's the paradox. The more you delay, the more exhausted you feel. The more you act, the more energized you become. Action creates momentum. Momentum creates motivation, not the other way around. Darius introduces the idea that every task carries emotional weight. When you avoid something, you carry it with you all day. It sits in your mind like an unpaid debt. And the cost isn't just productivity. The cost is mental peace. When you do what you said you would do, even something small, you restore trust in yourself. When you don't, you slowly break that trust. And a person who doesn't trust themselves struggles to build anything meaningful: relationships, careers, goals, or confidence. This is why "Do It Today" is not just a productivity slogan. It's a philosophy of self-respect. It means honoring your own intentions. It means acting when it matters. It means choosing long-term fulfillment over short-term comfort. Darius talks about how successful people don't have better ideas. They execute ordinary ideas consistently. Most ideas fail not because they're bad, but because they're never fully tried. And trying means risking failure. But failure is not the enemy. Inaction is. Failure teaches. Inaction keeps you stuck. The book challenges the illusion of someday. Someday is not a date on the calendar. Someday is a decision you never make. There are people who dreamed of writing books, starting businesses, improving their health, repairing relationships, and one day, life made the decision for them. Time ran out. Not because they were unlucky, but because they waited. This is why Darius keeps returning to one core truth. Your future is created in the present moment. Not tomorrow. Not next year. Today. Small actions, done consistently, compound into massive results. But small delays, repeated daily, compound into regret. You don't need more time. You need more honesty with yourself. You already know what matters. You already know what you've been avoiding. And the cost of delay is higher than you think. Because while you're waiting, life is moving. People who act build experience. People who wait build excuses. One builds momentum. The other builds stories to justify staying stuck. Darius explains that discipline is not about force. It's about removing friction. Make the right action easier. Make the wrong action harder. Stop relying on willpower. Design your environment to support action. Because willpower is unreliable. Systems are not. When you decide once and act daily, you eliminate negotiation with yourself. No debating. No delaying. No emotional bargaining. You don't ask, "Do I feel like it?" You ask, "What did I commit to?" And you act. This is how ordinary people create extraordinary lives. Not through intensity, but through consistency. The book also explores how people confuse being busy with being effective. You can fill your day with activity and still avoid what matters most. The hardest task is usually the most important one, and it's the one people delay the longest. Because it challenges identity. It challenges comfort. It challenges fear. So Darius suggests starting before you feel ready. Starting messy. Starting imperfect. Progress beats perfection every single time. Waiting for perfect conditions is the fastest way to waste years. And the moment you accept that discomfort is part of the process, procrastination loses power over you. You stop asking for permission to begin. You begin. And as you act, something shifts inside you. You stop seeing yourself as someone who plans and start seeing yourself as someone who does. That identity change is everything. Because once you see yourself as someone who takes action, your standards rise. Your confidence grows. Your life changes. And it all starts with a simple decision. Do it today. You don't need a dramatic transformation to change your life. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need permission, motivation, or confidence. What you need is the courage to act while things still feel uncomfortable. Darius Foroux makes it clear that procrastination thrives in ambiguity. When a task feels vague, your mind resists it. When something feels overwhelming, you avoid it. So the key is not to wait until you feel ready, but to make the task so clear and small that avoidance becomes harder than action. Most people say they don't have time. But time is not the real problem. The real problem is priority. You always find time for what you value. You always find time for what feels urgent. The issue is that important things rarely feel urgent until it's too late. Health doesn't feel urgent until you're sick. Learning doesn't feel urgent until opportunities disappear. Relationships don't feel urgent until they break. By the time something becomes urgent, the cost is higher. Doing it today is about respecting the future version of yourself. It's about saying, I won't make tomorrow suffer because of today's comfort. Darius explains that the pain of discipline is temporary, but the pain of regret is permanent. Discipline hurts in the moment. Regret hurts every time you remember what you didn't do. And regret has a way of following people quietly. It doesn't scream. It whispers. What if you had tried? What if you hadn't waited? What if you had believed in yourself a little more? Those questions haunt people more than failure ever does. Failure is loud but short-lived. Regret is silent but long-lasting. One of the most powerful ideas in the book is the concept of personal integrity. Not integrity as the world sees it, but integrity with yourself. When you say you'll do something and then don't, you break a promise. Even if no one else knows, you know. And over time, those broken promises pile up. You stop trusting your own words. You stop believing yourself. That's why confidence feels fake for many people. It's built on words, not actions. Real confidence comes from evidence. Evidence that you show up. Evidence that you act. Evidence that you follow through. Every time you do what you said you would do, you deposit trust into yourself. Every time you don't, you withdraw from it. Eventually, your self-image matches your behavior. If you act like someone who delays, you become someone who delays. If you act like someone who takes action, you become someone who takes action. Identity follows behavior. This is why Darius emphasizes starting small, but starting now. You don't need to overhaul your life in one day. You need to prove to yourself that you can act today. One task, one action, one promise kept. Momentum doesn't come from motivation. It comes from movement. And once movement starts, resistance weakens. The book also addresses the myth of multitasking. People think doing more at once means doing more overall. But in reality, multitasking fragments attention and increases avoidance. Deep work requires focus. Focus requires saying no to distractions. And distractions are everywhere. Your phone, social media, notifications, noise. Darius explains that distraction is not just external, it's internal. You distract yourself to avoid discomfort. Scrolling feels easier than starting. Checking messages feels safer than creating something meaningful. But distraction is not rest. It drains energy without giving anything back. Real rest comes after effort, not before it. Another powerful idea is the importance of boredom. When you remove constant stimulation, your mind becomes clearer. Ideas surface. Focus improves. But most people are afraid of boredom because boredom forces you to face yourself. So they stay busy. They stay distracted. They stay stuck. Doing it today means choosing intention over impulse. It means deciding how you spend your attention. Because attention is life. What you give attention to grows. What you ignore fades. If you give attention to fear, fear grows. If you give attention to progress, progress grows. Darius also talks about the illusion of once things calm down. People say they'll start when life becomes less busy. But life doesn't calm down. There is always something. Waiting for calm is another form of delay. The truth is, you must act within chaos. You must build discipline in imperfect conditions. If you wait for ideal circumstances, you will wait forever. He emphasizes that success is often boring. It's repetitive. It's unglamorous. Showing up every day. Doing the work when no one is watching. Repeating simple actions consistently. People romanticize success but avoid the routine that creates it. Do It Today is about embracing the boring process. Another deep insight from the book is that thinking is not neutral. Overthinking is a form of self-sabotage. Thinking feels productive, but excessive thinking delays action. You don't need to think more. You need to do more. It weighs you down. So Darius encourages finishing small things regularly. Finish emails. Finish workouts. Finish tasks. Completion creates momentum. The more you finish, the easier it becomes to start. And gradually, your identity shifts. You stop seeing yourself as someone who dreams. You see yourself as someone who executes. This identity change transforms everything. Because when action becomes part of who you are, discipline feels natural. You don't fight yourself anymore. You align with yourself. Doing it today becomes your default, not your exception. You stop negotiating with your future. You choose now. There is a moment in every person's life when they realize that waiting has become a habit, not a decision. A habit. You don't even notice it anymore. You delay automatically. You postpone without thinking. It feels normal. And that's what makes procrastination dangerous. It slowly becomes your identity. Darius Foroux explains that habits are formed not by big events, but by small repeated choices. Each time you choose comfort over effort, your brain learns something. It learns that avoidance is acceptable. It learns that delay is safe. And once your brain learns that lesson, it will keep repeating it. But the same mechanism works in reverse. Each time you act despite resistance, your brain learns something new. It learns that discomfort is survivable. It learns that action leads to relief. It learns that progress feels better than avoidance. This is why the first step is always the hardest. Because you are not just doing the task, you are rewriting a pattern. The book emphasizes that you don't need to eliminate fear to move forward. Fear is part of growth. Fear is a sign that you're doing something meaningful. If you wait until fear disappears, you will never move. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is acting while fear is present. And fear loses power when you stop negotiating with it. Most people negotiate with their fear. Courage is acting while fear is present. And fear loses power when you stop negotiating with it. Most people negotiate with their fear. They say, just a little later. Just one more video. Just one more day. Fear loves negotiation. It always wins. Action ends negotiation. Once you start, the debate is over. Darius talks about how people romanticize motivation but underestimate commitment. Motivation comes and goes. Commitment stays. Commitment means you act even when motivation is gone. Especially when motivation is gone. That's when real change happens. Another important idea is that your environment shapes your behavior more than your intentions. If your environment encourages distraction, you will get distracted. If your environment encourages focus, focus becomes easier. You don't need superhuman discipline. You need smart design. Put your phone away. Limit choices. Reduce friction. Make the right action the default. Most people try to rely on willpower, but willpower is fragile. It fades when you're tired, stressed, or emotional. Systems don't fade. This is why people with structure outperform people with talent, but no discipline. Darius also explains the concept of delayed rewards. Meaningful goals don't give immediate pleasure. Scrolling does. Snacking does. Entertainment does. So your brain chooses the immediate reward. Doing it today means choosing delayed satisfaction over instant pleasure. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Because delayed rewards compound. Every small action today creates a bigger payoff tomorrow. But instant pleasure steals tomorrow's energy. This is why many people feel busy but unfulfilled. They consume instead of create. They react instead of build. Consumption feels good now. Creation feels good later. A fulfilled life is built, not consumed. Darius reminds us that time is neutral. It doesn't care about your goals. It moves forward regardless. A fulfilled life is built, not consumed. Darius reminds us that time is neutral. It doesn't care about your goals. It moves forward regardless. If you don't decide how to use your time, distractions will decide for you. Time is not your enemy. Your indecision is. Another powerful lesson is about self-honesty. Most people lie to themselves gently. I'm tired. I'm not ready. I'll do it later. Sometimes those statements are true. Often, they're excuses. Self-honesty requires courage. It requires admitting when you're avoiding something. But honesty gives you power. You can't change what you won't acknowledge. Darius explains that people often confuse planning with progress. Planning feels safe. Action feels risky. So they plan endlessly. But plans don't build skills. Action does. You don't learn by thinking. You learn by doing. Mistakes are teachers. Avoidance teaches nothing. Another theme is responsibility for energy. Your energy is influenced by sleep, movement, nutrition, and focus. When your energy is low, procrastination increases. So doing it today also means taking care of your body and mind. Discipline is not punishment. It's self-respect. You don't force yourself to act because you hate yourself. You act because you care about your future. This shift changes everything. When discipline comes from self-respect, it feels empowering, not exhausting. Darius also talks about choosing fewer goals. Trying to do everything leads to doing nothing. Focus is power. When you commit to fewer things, you give them more attention. And attention creates excellence. Doing it today means choosing what matters most and acting on it now. Another deep insight is about emotional avoidance. People procrastinate to avoid feeling inadequate. Starting means admitting you're not perfect. Avoiding lets you keep the illusion of potential. But potential without action is meaningless. Your worth is not in what you could do. It's in what you do. Darius encourages embracing being a beginner. Beginners are free. They don't need to be perfect. Experts are just beginners who didn't quit. This is why starting today matters more than starting perfectly. The book also explores how people attach their identity to outcomes. They fear failure because they think it defines them. But failure is feedback, not identity. You are not your results. You are your actions. Detach your self-worth from outcomes. Attach it to effort. When effort becomes the goal, fear loses power. Another powerful lesson is about deadlines. Self-imposed deadlines often feel fake. But deadlines create urgency. So create real consequences. Tell someone. Commit publicly. Create accountability. Accountability turns intention into action. Darius emphasizes that your future self depends on your present self. They are not separate people. Every time you delay, you are pushing responsibility onto someone else, your future self. And your future self will feel the weight. Respect your future self enough to act today. The book also addresses the myth of balance. Balance doesn't mean equal time for everything. It means intentional choices. Sometimes, one area requires more focus. Doing it today means accepting temporary imbalance for long-term alignment. You can't build something meaningful without sacrifice. Sacrifice now creates freedom later. Another theme is resilience. Action builds resilience. Avoidance weakens it. Every time you face discomfort, you grow stronger. Every time you avoid it, you grow weaker. Strength is built through repetition. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. Small actions done daily beat big actions done rarely. Darius also highlights the danger of comparison. Comparing your beginning to someone else's middle creates discouragement. Focus on your path. The only comparison that matters is between who you are today and who you were yesterday. Progress is personal. Doing it today is about competing with your past, not others. Another key idea is that clarity of values drives action. When you know why something matters, action becomes easier. Without purpose, discipline feels pointless. So connect tasks to meaning. Why does this matter to you? What kind of person do you want to be? When action aligns with identity, resistance fades. The book ultimately teaches that life rewards courage, not comfort. Comfort keeps you where you are. Courage moves you forward. And courage is a decision you make daily. Not once. Every day. Most people believe that one day they will wake up feeling different. More confident. More disciplined. More ready. But that day rarely comes. Change doesn't arrive as a feeling. It arrives as a decision. Darius Foroux explains that the mistake people make is waiting for internal change before taking external action. They think motivation will appear first, then action will follow. But life works in the opposite direction. External action reshapes your internal world. When you act, your thoughts change. When you act, your emotions follow. When you act, your identity evolves. This is why doing something small today is more powerful than planning something big tomorrow. Your brain responds to evidence, not promises. If you keep promising yourself change but never act, your brain stops believing you. But when you act, even imperfectly, your brain updates its belief. This person follows through. And that belief changes behavior automatically. The book also explores how procrastination is often rooted in fear of success, not just fear of failure. Success brings responsibility, visibility, expectations. Staying stuck feels safer. If you never try, you never have to prove yourself. But safety has a cost. A safe life without growth becomes a small life. Darius reminds us that growth always feels uncomfortable because it requires leaving the familiar. Even if the familiar is painful, it feels unknown. Unknown progress feels scarier than known dissatisfaction. So people stay where they are. Doing it today means choosing growth over familiarity. Another idea the book emphasizes is momentum. Momentum is fragile at first, but powerful once built. The first action feels heavy. The second feels easier. The third feels natural. Momentum turns discipline into habit. This is why starting is everything. Once momentum exists, motivation becomes irrelevant. Darius also talks about the importance of constraints. Unlimited freedom leads to paralysis. When you have too many choices, you delay. Constraints create clarity. Limited time forces focus. Clear rules reduce decision fatigue. So instead of trying to optimize everything, simplify. Choose one task, one time, one place, and act. The book explains that energy follows focus. When your attention is scattered, your energy leaks. When your focus is sharp, energy increases. This is why finishing tasks feels energizing. Completion restores mental clarity. Unfinished tasks create background stress. Darius describes how many people confuse stress with productivity. They feel stressed, so they assume they are working hard. But stress without progress is just noise. Real productivity feels calm and focused. Doing it today doesn't mean rushing. It means acting deliberately. Another powerful insight is about self-talk. The way you speak to yourself shapes your behavior. If you constantly say, "I'm lazy," you act lazy. If you say, "I'm someone who takes action," you begin to act differently. Language matters. Speak to yourself like someone you want to become. Darius also explains that discipline is not about forcing yourself forever. It's about creating habits that eventually require no force. At first, effort is required. Over time, effort fades. What was once hard becomes automatic. That's the goal. Another key theme is acceptance of imperfection. Waiting for perfect conditions is avoidance. Start messy. Start badly. Start now. Progress corrects mistakes. Inaction preserves them. The book challenges the idea that you must feel confident to begin. Confidence is earned through repetition. You don't trust yourself because you haven't proven yourself. Prove yourself by acting. Darius also addresses emotional fatigue. When you delay important tasks, they drain emotional energy all day. When you complete them, you feel relief. So the task you're avoiding is often the one that will free you. Doing it today is not about doing everything. It's about doing the one thing that matters most. Another deep lesson is about ownership of your time. Your time is your life. Every wasted hour is a piece of life you never get back. This isn't meant to create guilt. It's meant to create awareness. When you value your time, your actions change. Darius emphasizes that no one is coming to save you. And that's not a negative message. It's empowering. It means you don't need permission. You don't need approval. You only need a decision. The book also talks about identity-based habits. Instead of focusing on goals, focus on becoming a person who acts. Ask yourself, what would someone who respects their time do right now? Then do that. This simple question cuts through procrastination. Another insight is that life rewards urgency. Not panic, urgency. Urgency comes from clarity. When you know what matters, action feels natural. Without clarity, everything feels optional. Doing it today means treating important tasks as non-negotiable. Darius also explains that procrastination often increases with success. As stakes rise, fear increases. So discipline must grow alongside ambition. You can't rely on motivation at higher levels. You must rely on systems. This is why consistency separates professionals from amateurs. Professionals act regardless of mood. Another theme is delayed discomfort versus delayed regret. You choose one. Either you face discomfort now, or you face regret later. Regret is heavier. Darius reminds us that you don't need to overhaul your entire life today. You need to win today. One small win, one action completed. That's enough. Because winning today makes winning tomorrow easier. And winning tomorrow changes your life. There is a quiet power in finishing what you start. Not because it impresses others, but because it changes how you see yourself. Darius Foroux explains that every completed task sends a signal to your mind. It says, I am reliable. I am capable. I can be trusted. And every delayed task sends the opposite signal. Over time, these signals shape your self-image. This is why procrastination is not harmless. It slowly rewires how you view yourself. You stop seeing yourself as someone who acts. You start seeing yourself as someone who postpones. And once that belief settles in, behavior follows. The book emphasizes that action creates self-respect. Not achievements. Not praise. Action. Self-respect is built in private moments when no one is watching. When you choose effort over comfort. When you honor your word. That's why doing it today is deeply personal. It's about who you become when no one is looking. Darius also talks about emotional resistance. Resistance shows up as tiredness, distraction, doubt, and excuses. But resistance is not a sign to stop. It's a sign that the work matters. If something feels important, resistance will appear. Your job is not to eliminate resistance. Your job is to move through it. Resistance weakens after you start. It feeds on delay. This is why the first 5 minutes are often the hardest. Once you begin, the mind settles. The noise quiets. Focus increases. Starting is the real work. Another powerful insight from the book is that procrastination often hides behind research. You read more. You watch more. You prepare more. Preparation feels safe. But preparation without execution is avoidance. Learning becomes useful only when applied. You don't need more information. You need more implementation. Darius encourages turning consumption into creation. For every piece of content you consume, create something. Write a paragraph. Take a step. Make a move. Creation builds confidence. Consumption builds dependency. The book also explores the idea of urgency versus pressure. Pressure overwhelms. Urgency focuses. Pressure comes from expectations. Urgency comes from purpose. When you know why something matters, urgency replaces pressure. Doing it today doesn't mean stressing yourself. It means caring enough to act. Another lesson is about tolerance for discomfort. Your tolerance determines your growth. If your tolerance is low, you avoid challenges. If your tolerance is high, you expand quickly. Tolerance is built by repeated exposure. Each time you act despite discomfort, your tolerance increases. Over time, what once felt hard becomes normal. This is how people grow quietly and steadily. Darius also discusses the idea of identity lag. Your identity always lags behind your actions. You act first. Your identity updates later. This is why waiting to feel like that kind of person doesn't work. You become that person by acting like them. Want to be disciplined? Act disciplined today. Want to be confident? Act despite fear today. Want to be productive? Complete one meaningful task today. Identity follows behavior. The book also touches on the danger of comfort zones. Comfort zones feel safe, but they slowly shrink your world. The more you avoid discomfort, the smaller your life becomes. Doing it today expands your comfort zone. Each action stretches it slightly. Over time, your world grows. Darius emphasizes that freedom is built through discipline. This idea feels backwards to many people. They think discipline limits freedom. But lack of discipline creates chaos. Discipline creates structure. Structure creates stability. The actions you take today decide that. This awareness creates urgency, not panic. Urgency. Another theme is responsibility for attention. Your attention is constantly being pulled. Protect it. Where your attention goes, your life follows. Doing it today means guarding your focus fiercely. Darius also explains that success is often invisible for a long time. People quit too early because results lag behind effort. Consistency must outlast doubt. Trust the process. Action today compounds silently. One day, results appear. The book ultimately teaches that life is shaped by ordinary days, not big moments. Not dramatic changes. Ordinary days. Ordinary actions. Repeated. Doing it today is about honoring the ordinary. Because ordinary actions create extraordinary lives. One of the most uncomfortable truths in this book is that clarity is overrated. People say they don't act because they're confused. They say they don't know the next step. They say they need more direction. But Darius Foroux explains that confusion often disappears once you move. Action clarifies. Stillness confuses. When you stay still, your mind creates endless questions. When you act, reality answers them. You don't need the full map. You need the next step. And that next step is usually obvious. People delay because they want certainty. But certainty comes from experience, not thinking. You cannot think your way into a better life. You must act your way into it. Another powerful lesson in the book is about emotional maturity. Emotional maturity means doing what needs to be done even when it doesn't feel good. Children act based on feelings. Adults act based on values. When you let emotions control your actions, procrastination wins. When you let values guide you, discipline becomes natural. Doing it today is a sign of emotional maturity. Darius also highlights that procrastination often increases when tasks feel too big. The brain resists large, undefined work. Stability creates freedom. When you control your actions, you control your life. Another theme is delayed gratification. Modern life trains us to expect everything instantly. But meaningful things take time. Doing it today means planting seeds you won't see immediately. This requires patience. But patience is easier when you trust the process. Trust is built through repetition. Darius also addresses burnout. Burnout doesn't come from working too hard. It often comes from working without meaning. When your actions align with your values, energy increases. When they don't, exhaustion follows. This is why clarity matters. Know why you're doing what you're doing. Purpose fuels persistence. Another insight is about eliminating decision fatigue. When you decide in advance, you remove daily negotiation. Set routines. Create schedules. Limit choices. Decisions drain energy. Habits conserve it. Doing it today becomes automatic when decisions are made ahead of time. The book also explores the importance of saying no. Every yes to distraction is a no to progress. Focus requires sacrifice. You can't do everything, but you can do what matters. Saying no protects your time and energy. Darius reminds us that life is not about doing more. It's about doing what matters consistently. Another powerful idea is about self-compassion. Discipline does not mean self-punishment. Be firm, not harsh. When you fail, don't quit. Reset and continue. Consistency beats perfection. Doing it today includes forgiving yourself quickly and moving forward. The book also highlights that procrastination increases when goals feel disconnected from identity. If a goal doesn't align with who you want to be, resistance increases. Align goals with values. Ask yourself, is this who I want to become? If yes, act. If no, reconsider. Darius emphasizes that time will pass whether you act or not. In 1 year, you will arrive somewhere. The question is, where? Darius emphasizes that learning happens fastest when you combine action with reflection. Act, reflect, adjust. This simple loop creates growth. Avoiding action breaks the loop. No action means no feedback. No feedback means no improvement. The book also touches on mental clutter. Too many commitments create overwhelm. Say no more often. Fewer commitments mean more focus. Focus creates depth. Depth creates excellence. Doing it today often means doing less, but better. Another lesson is about delayed decisions. Indecision is a decision. Choosing not to choose keeps you stuck. Make decisions faster. You can always adjust later. Action beats perfection. Darius explains that regret is rarely about what you did. It's about what you didn't do. Most people regret inaction, not effort. Trying and failing feels better than never trying. Because at least you know. The book also highlights the importance of personal standards. Raise your standards for yourself, not for others. Hold yourself to the promise of action. Standards shape behavior. If your standard is comfort, you delay. If your standard is integrity, you act. Doing it today is a standard. Another theme is patience with the process. Results take time. People quit because they expect fast rewards. But growth is slow at first. Trust the compound effect. Small actions done daily add up. Darius reminds us that discipline creates options. When you act consistently, opportunities appear. When you delay, options disappear. Life rewards preparation through action. Another powerful insight is about fear of commitment. Commitment removes escape routes. And that scares people. But commitment creates momentum. When you commit, action follows. Half commitment creates hesitation. Doing it today requires full commitment, even if the step is small. The book also addresses the myth of finding your passion. Passion is built through engagement, not discovered through waiting. You find passion by doing. Action creates interest. Interest creates passion. Waiting kills passion. Darius also explains that your environment reflects your priorities. If your environment is chaotic, your focus suffers. Clean your workspace. Organize your time. Environment supports behavior. Doing it today includes preparing your surroundings for success. Another theme is resilience through repetition. Every action strengthens your ability to act again. Avoidance weakens it. This is why consistency matters so much. The book ultimately teaches that life is not about dramatic breakthroughs. It's about quiet discipline. Doing what needs to be done, even when no one is watching. Especially when no one is watching. One of the most liberating realizations in this book is that you don't have to feel good to do good work. You don't have to feel inspired. You don't have to feel confident. You don't even have to feel ready. You just have to act. Darius Foroux explains that waiting to feel good before taking action is one of the biggest traps people fall into. Feelings are temporary. They change constantly. If your behavior depends on how you feel, your progress will always be unstable. Some days you'll feel motivated. Most days you won't. Discipline is the bridge between goals and reality. And discipline is simply choosing to act regardless of mood. This doesn't mean ignoring your emotions. It means not letting them control your life. Another powerful idea in the book is that procrastination often comes from fear of effort, not fear of failure. People underestimate how tiring meaningful work feels at first. But what they don't realize is that effort creates energy. The first moments feel heavy. Then something shifts. Focus increases. Momentum builds. Energy rises. Action creates clarity and energy at the same time. This is why people often feel more tired doing nothing than doing something meaningful. Idleness drains. Purpose energizes. Doing it today means defending your time from distractions. Another powerful lesson is about separating identity from outcomes. You are not your results. Results fluctuate. Effort is what matters. Measure success by effort, not outcome. This mindset reduces fear and increases action. Darius explains that procrastination thrives in secrecy. When no one knows what you're supposed to do, it's easy to delay. Visibility creates accountability. Share your goals. Let others see your progress. Accountability turns intention into commitment. The book also explores the idea that doing nothing is still a choice. Not choosing is choosing. Delaying is deciding. And every decision shapes your future. Doing it today is choosing growth. Another theme is patience with yourself. Change takes time. You will fail sometimes. That doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. The key is to return to action quickly. Don't let one bad day turn into a bad month. Reset. Continue. Darius also talks about the importance of simplifying goals. Complex goals increase resistance. Simplify. One clear action per day. That's enough. Another powerful insight is about energy management. Work when your energy is highest. Don't fight your biology. Use it. Structure your day to support action. Doing it today means aligning effort with energy. The book emphasizes that discipline is not punishment, it's freedom. When you control your actions, you control your future. Freedom is not doing whatever you want. Freedom is doing what matters. Another theme is delayed identity satisfaction. You don't feel like a disciplined person immediately. That feeling comes later. Act first. Identity follows. Darius also addresses fear of missing out. People delay important work because they fear missing pleasure. But missing purpose hurts more. Choose meaning over distraction. Another lesson is about building momentum early in the day. When the morning. Darius also talks about the danger of self-labeling. When you say, I'm a procrastinator, you turn behavior into identity. Behavior can change. Identity feels permanent. So stop labeling yourself. You are not lazy. You are not unmotivated. You are someone who hasn't built the habit of action yet. And habits can be built. Another lesson is about using deadlines wisely. Deadlines create urgency, but artificial deadlines without consequences don't work. So attach meaning to deadlines. Create accountability. Tell someone. Commit publicly. Set consequences. Urgency pushes action. The book also explores how people sabotage progress by trying to optimize everything. They look for the perfect system, the perfect tool, the perfect routine. Optimization feels productive, but progress comes from execution, not optimization. Use simple systems. Act consistently. Perfection delays. Action accelerates. Darius emphasizes that discipline is a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. At first, it feels weak. At first, resistance feels overwhelming. But each time you act, discipline grows. Eventually, what once felt impossible feels normal. This is why consistency matters more than talent. Talent without discipline fades. Discipline without talent grows. Another key insight is about mental resistance versus physical effort. Most resistance is mental. The task itself is often easier than the thought of the task. Once you begin, resistance fades. Your mind exaggerates difficulty. Action corrects exaggeration. The book also addresses the problem of starting too many things. Starting is exciting. Finishing is hard. But unfinished projects drain energy. Choose fewer projects. Finish them. Completion builds confidence. Confidence fuels action. Darius also discusses the idea of ownership over your schedule. If you don't control your schedule, others will. Schedule your priorities first. Protect your time. Time is your most valuable asset. Small wins create confidence. Confidence fuels further action. Doing it today often starts with the first hour. The book ultimately teaches that life is shaped by the actions you take when no one is forcing you. When there is no deadline, no pressure, no external reward. Those moments define who you become. And when you choose to act in those moments, your life begins to change. Not all at once, but steadily, quietly, powerfully. And one day, you look back and realize that everything changed because you stopped waiting. You stopped planning. You stopped hoping. And you started doing. Today, another quiet truth the book reveals is that most people don't actually fail. They simply quit too early. They expect visible progress too soon. When it doesn't arrive, doubt creeps in. And doubt whispers the most dangerous sentence of all. This isn't working. Darius Foroux explains that progress often happens underground first. Like roots growing beneath the soil, nothing seems to change on the surface. But beneath that surface, skills are forming. Habits are solidifying. Confidence is being built silently. Those who quit never see the breakthrough. Those who continue do. Doing it today means trusting the invisible phase of growth. Another powerful lesson in the book is about self-leadership. If you can't lead yourself, no one else will. Self-leadership means setting standards and following them. It means not waiting for external pressure to act. Most people only act when they feel forced. Deadlines, fear, consequences. But the strongest people act from internal commitment. They don't wait to be pushed. They pull themselves forward. Darius also highlights that procrastination often increases when goals feel meaningless. If you don't care deeply, resistance grows. So reconnect with meaning. Ask yourself why this matters. Who does this help? What kind of life does this build? Meaning fuels discipline. Another idea explored in the book is the illusion of readiness. People say, I'll start when I'm ready. But readiness is not a state you reach. It's a decision you make. You become ready by starting. Waiting for readiness is like waiting to learn to swim without entering the water. Action creates readiness. The book also touches on emotional avoidance through busyness. People fill their schedules to avoid facing important work. Busy feels productive, but busy without progress leads to burnout. Doing it today means choosing meaningful work over busy work. Another key insight is about personal responsibility. Blaming circumstances feels comforting, but it keeps you powerless. Responsibility feels heavy at first, but it gives you control. When you take responsibility, action becomes possible. Darius emphasizes that discipline is not about extreme effort. It's about consistency. You don't need heroic willpower. You need daily follow-through. Small promises kept daily build massive self-trust. Another theme is delayed courage. People say they'll be brave later, but courage doesn't grow on its own. Courage is built by repeated exposure to fear. Each time you act despite fear, courage increases. Avoidance weakens courage. Doing it today strengthens it. The book also explains that mental resistance is often exaggerated. Your mind predicts discomfort worse than reality. Once you begin, the discomfort is usually manageable. The anticipation is worse than the action. This is why starting matters so much. Another lesson is about simplifying expectations. Don't aim for perfect days. Aim for honest days. Did you do what mattered? That's enough. Darius also discusses the danger of all-or-nothing thinking. People think if they can't do everything, they should do nothing. This mindset fuels procrastination. Partial progress beats no progress. Doing something is always better than doing nothing. The book highlights that discipline is built during ordinary moments. I'm just not consistent. These stories become self-fulfilling. Change the story by changing behavior. You don't need to believe a new story first. Act in a new way. Let the story update itself. The book also discusses the illusion of productivity tools. New apps, new planners, new systems. They feel exciting. They promise change. But tools don't do the work. People do. If you're avoiding action, no tool will fix that. Start with simple systems. Focus on execution. Another deep lesson is about delayed self-respect. Every time you avoid something important, you feel a subtle drop in self-respect. You might not notice it consciously, but it accumulates. And over time, that erosion affects confidence, ambition, and self-belief. Doing it today repairs self-respect. One action can restore more confidence than 1,000 affirmations. Darius also explores the difference between interest and commitment. Interest fades. Commitment remains. Interest depends on mood. Commitment depends on values. If you rely on interest, you'll act inconsistently. If you rely on commitment, action becomes stable. The book highlights that progress is rarely dramatic. It's often boring. Showing up, doing the same thing again, improving slightly. People quit because they expect excitement. But excitement is not required for progress. Consistency is. Another insight is about emotional courage. Emotional courage is doing the thing that makes you uncomfortable emotionally. Sending the email, having the conversation, starting the project. These actions are rarely physically hard. They are emotionally hard. And emotional courage grows through repetition. Darius also talks about respecting your own standards. If your standards are low, discipline feels unnecessary. Raise your standards for yourself. Not perfection, integrity. When your standards rise, behavior follows. Another theme is the idea of default behaviors. When you're tired or stressed, you fall back to defaults. Another lesson that slowly reveals itself as you move through this book is that procrastination is often a way of avoiding responsibility for your own potential. As long as you don't fully try, you can tell yourself a comforting story. I could have done better if I wanted to. I had more in me. I just didn't have the time. These stories protect the ego, but they also keep you trapped. Darius Foroux explains that fully trying is risky because it removes excuses. When you give your best effort, the outcome becomes real. You can't hide behind what if. But here's the truth most people don't want to admit. Living with unanswered what ifs is more painful than facing real results. Clarity, even when it hurts, is better than endless uncertainty. Doing it today means choosing truth over comfort. The book also dives into the idea of self-discipline as self-direction. Discipline isn't about control from the outside. It's about choosing your direction deliberately. If you don't choose your direction, habits will choose it for you. Distractions will choose it for you. Other people's priorities will choose it for you. Discipline is how you reclaim authorship of your life. Another powerful insight is that procrastination thrives in isolation. When you keep everything in your head, tasks feel heavier. Writing things down reduces mental load. Clarity increases. Action feels easier. Externalizing your goals turns them from vague ideas into concrete commitments. Darius also emphasizes that action reduces anxiety. People think they avoid action because they're anxious, but often, anxiety exists because they're avoiding action. Uncertainty fuels anxiety. Action replaces uncertainty with information. Even failure reduces anxiety because it gives clarity. Doing nothing keeps anxiety alive. Another important theme is the role of identity narratives. Everyone tells themselves a story about who they are. I'm not disciplined. I work better under pressure. I'm just not consistent. These stories become self-fulfilling. Change the story by changing behavior. You don't need to believe a new story first. Act in a new way. Let the story update itself. The book also discusses the illusion of productivity tools. New apps, new planners, new systems. They feel exciting. They promise change. But tools don't do the work. People do. If you're avoiding action, no tool will fix that. Start with simple systems. Focus on execution. Another deep lesson is about delayed self-respect. Every time you avoid something important, you feel a subtle drop in self-respect. You might not notice it consciously, but it accumulates. And over time, that erosion affects confidence, ambition, and self-belief. Doing it today repairs self-respect. One action can restore more confidence than 1,000 affirmations. Darius also explores the difference between interest and commitment. Interest fades. Commitment remains. Interest depends on mood. Commitment depends on values. If you rely on interest, you'll act inconsistently. If you rely on commitment, action becomes stable. The book highlights that progress is rarely dramatic. It's often boring. Showing up, doing the same thing again, improving slightly. People quit because they expect excitement. But excitement is not required for progress. Consistency is. Another insight is about emotional courage. Emotional courage is doing the thing that makes you uncomfortable emotionally. Sending the email, having the conversation, starting the project. These actions are rarely physically hard. They are emotionally hard. And emotional courage grows through repetition. Darius also talks about respecting your own standards. If your standards are low, discipline feels unnecessary. Raise your standards for yourself. Not perfection, integrity. When your standards rise, behavior follows. Another theme is the idea of default behaviors. When you're tired or stressed, you fall back to defaults. Another subtle but powerful idea in this book is that procrastination is often fueled by emotional attachment to comfort. Comfort feels familiar. Comfort feels safe. Comfort doesn't challenge your identity, but comfort slowly becomes a cage. Darius Foroux explains that when you repeatedly choose comfort, your tolerance for discomfort shrinks. Tasks that once felt manageable start to feel overwhelming. Your threshold lowers. On the other hand, when you regularly choose effort, your tolerance expands. Hard things feel normal. Normal things feel easy. This is why action builds strength, not exhaustion. The book also explores the idea of delayed alignment. Many people feel disconnected from their lives because their actions don't match their values. They say health matters, but they don't act on it. They say growth matters, but they delay learning. They say freedom matters, but they avoid responsibility. This mismatch creates inner tension. Doing it today restores alignment. When your actions reflect your values, peace follows. Another important lesson is about personal accountability without self-judgment. Accountability means owning your actions, not beating yourself up for mistakes. Harsh self-criticism leads to avoidance. Constructive honesty leads to action. Notice what you did. Notice what you didn't do. Adjust. No drama. No shame. The book also emphasizes that procrastination often increases when tasks feel meaningless in isolation. Connect tasks to a bigger picture. A single workout may feel pointless, but consistent workouts build health. A single page may feel insignificant, but pages become books. Meaning emerges through accumulation. Darius talks about the idea of minimum viable effort. On low-energy days, reduce the scope, not the standard. Do the smallest version of the task. 5 minutes. One sentence. One action. This keeps the habit alive. Consistency matters more than intensity. Another theme is the danger of emotional reasoning. Feeling tired doesn't mean you are incapable. Feeling unmotivated doesn't mean the task isn't important. Feelings are signals, not commands. Learn to observe them without obeying them. Doing it today often means acting despite contradictory emotions. The book also discusses the concept of friction. Every unnecessary step increases resistance. Simplify. Prepare in advance. Remove obstacles. If you want to write, open the document beforehand. If you want to exercise, lay out clothes. Reduce friction. Increase follow-through. Darius also explains that procrastination can be a form of self-sabotage rooted in fear of change. Change threatens identity. If you change your behavior, you may change your life. That can be frightening. Staying the same feels predictable, but predictability without growth leads to stagnation. Doing it today means choosing evolution over familiarity. Another insight is about ownership of outcomes over time. Short-term results may disappoint. Long-term consistency rarely does. Judge progress over months, not days. Patience keeps you moving. The book also highlights that discipline becomes easier when you respect your own time. When you treat your time as valuable, you use it intentionally. Wasting time feels costly. Using time wisely feels rewarding. Doing it today is a way of honoring your limited time on this planet. Another lesson is about emotional clarity through action. Thinking creates noise. Action creates clarity. When you're stuck mentally, move physically. Take a step. Any step. Movement breaks mental loops. Darius also discusses the role of self-image in procrastination. If you see yourself as inconsistent, you behave inconsistently. Change behavior first. Self-image updates later. The book encourages building evidence, not affirmations. One completed action beats 100 positive thoughts. Another theme is resistance to starting over. People avoid restarting because it feels like admitting failure. Another subtle but powerful idea in this book is that procrastination is often fueled by emotional attachment to comfort. Comfort feels familiar. Comfort feels safe. Comfort doesn't challenge your identity, but comfort slowly becomes a cage. Darius Foroux explains that when you repeatedly choose comfort, your tolerance for discomfort shrinks. Tasks that once felt manageable start to feel overwhelming. Your threshold lowers. On the other hand, when you regularly choose effort, your tolerance expands. Hard things feel normal. Normal things feel easy. This is why action builds strength, not exhaustion. The book also explores the idea of delayed alignment. Many people feel disconnected from their lives because their actions don't match their values. They say health matters, but they don't act on it. They say growth matters, but they delay learning. They say freedom matters, but they avoid responsibility. This mismatch creates inner tension. Doing it today restores alignment. When your actions reflect your values, peace follows. Another important lesson is about personal accountability without self-judgment. Accountability means owning your actions, not beating yourself up for mistakes. Harsh self-criticism leads to avoidance. Constructive honesty leads to action. Notice what you did. Notice what you didn't do. Adjust. No drama. No shame. The book also emphasizes that procrastination often increases when tasks feel meaningless in isolation. Connect tasks to a bigger picture. A single workout may feel pointless, but consistent workouts build health. A single page may feel insignificant, but pages become books. Meaning emerges through accumulation. Darius talks about the idea of minimum viable effort. On low-energy days, reduce the scope, not the standard. Do the smallest version of the task. 5 minutes. One sentence. One action. This keeps the habit alive. Consistency matters more than intensity. Another theme is the danger of emotional reasoning. But restarting is strength. Every restart is an opportunity to act differently. Don't cling to broken momentum. Reset and move forward. Doing it today includes starting again when needed. The book also explains that discipline protects future freedom. Freedom is not the absence of effort. It's the result of sustained effort. Financial freedom requires discipline. Time freedom requires discipline. Emotional freedom requires discipline. Effort now creates choice later. Another insight is about the cost of indecision. Indecision drains energy without producing results. Decide faster. You can adjust later. Forward motion beats perfect direction. Darius emphasizes that action creates self-efficacy, the belief that you can influence outcomes. This belief is built through experience. Avoidance destroys self-efficacy. Doing it today strengthens it. Another theme is about choosing courage daily. Courage is not a personality trait. It's a repeated choice. Small courageous acts accumulate. Sending the message, starting the task, showing up. These acts build a courageous life. The book also touches on the idea that procrastination is often learned behavior. You learned it through repetition, which means you can unlearn it the same way. Through repetition. Act today, act tomorrow. Repeat. Over time, action becomes natural. Another lesson is about aligning short-term actions with long-term identity. Ask yourself, what kind of person am I becoming by delaying? Then ask, what kind of person do I want to become? Let that answer guide your next action. Darius reminds us that life doesn't reward potential. It rewards execution. Ideas are common. Execution is rare. Doing it today puts you in the rare group. The book ultimately reinforces that you don't need more courage, more intelligence, or more resources. You need a decision to act when it matters, a decision to stop waiting, a decision to do it today. And now, as we come to the final moments of this journey, take a quiet second with yourself. Think about everything you've heard so far, not as ideas, not as motivation, but as a mirror. This book was never really about productivity. It was about honesty. Honesty with yourself about how much time you have wasted waiting for the perfect moment. Honesty about how often you knew what to do, yet chose not to do it. Darius Foroux's message is simple, but it is uncomfortable. Your life does not change tomorrow. It changes today, not next week, not after more planning, not after more videos, but after one decision followed by one action. Right now, there is something in your life you've been postponing. You know exactly what it is. It could be a conversation you've avoided, a habit you keep promising to start, a goal you talk about but never touch, a version of yourself you keep delaying. This moment is asking you a question. Are you going to postpone again? Or are you going to act? Because the truth is, your future self is watching you right now. Your future self doesn't need you to be perfect. Your future self needs you to be brave for just a few minutes. Doing it today doesn't mean changing your entire life in one day. It means choosing one action that moves you forward instead of keeping you stuck. One email, one page, one workout, one decision. That is how real transformation begins. And if this message resonated with you, if even one sentence made you pause and reflect, then this video has already done its job. But now it's your turn to do yours. Before you leave, take a small action right now. Like this video if you believe that action matters more than intention. Subscribe to the Universe of Book if you want more deep, life-changing book breakdowns that don't just inspire you, but push you to change. And in the comments, write the one thing you are committing to do today. Not tomorrow, not someday. Today. Let this be your public promise. Not to us, to yourself. Because years from now, when you look back at your life, you won't remember the days you planned. You'll remember the days you acted. And this can be one of those days. Do it today.